Hi, Peter Charles here, Folk to Fly Fly Fishing, and today let's talk about the benefits of having a long leader on our shooting head setups or our Skagit head setups, even when we're using sink tips or full sinking lines. I know that is not, your typical way of thinking about leaders. You hear people talk or read online and they'll say, well, if you're using a sink tip or a sinking line, you should have like a 3 or 4 foot leader. Some, I've seen them as short as 1 foot, okay? And I've talked many, many times about how this is just a bad idea in general. If your flies get down on their own, you can use a long leader on a sink tip or a full sinking line. Typically, my leaders are 8 to 12 foot, 8 to 10 foot, somewhere in that ballpark off the end of a sinker, sometimes even longer. I've gone as long as 15 feet when I've been using a slow sinking line, like a slow intermediate, for example. So there's no reason why you need to have a short leader if your flies sink well. And you can run an experiment if you want. All you need is some clear water with some current and some depth, and try it. You can see if I put an aluminum tube with a rabbit strip wing and say on 10 foot of T14, you know what? Probably it won't be down to its proper depth until it gets on the dangle, quite literally. So it would be doing this business in terms of its sink rate. And at the beginning of the arc of the swing, it will be right up near the surface and your sink tip's in a big U. Seen it happen multiple times. It's happened to me, it's happened to other people. So long leaders and a fast sinking fly on the end of a sink tip or a full sinking line works perfectly fine. So we talk about that for fishing, but what about casting? Well, long leaders, let's say 8 to 10, 12 feet on the end of your line, makes a big difference in your casting. Now, I will say one thing. This is built on one assumption, that you're putting the fly in the same spot every time. So if you used a short leader or a long leader, when you plant your anchor, the fly's landing in the same spot. If the fly is landing way out in front when you're using a long leader, there's no benefit. So you got to drop the fly in the same spot. But we're going to make that assumption that you're doing that. And then we'll look at my model here and we'll talk about what happens to your D-loop and what happens to the energy in the cast when you use a short leader and a long leader. So here I've got a short leader illustrated, a 3 foot leader. There's my sink tip. The whole thing's in the water, and a good chunk of the bottom of the D-loop is in the water as well. And that is at the instant we begin the forward stroke. So we're back here. We're ready to make our forward stroke. And we start into the forward stroke, and then we get to the end of it where we release the energy in the rod into the line. So what happens when we get to that stage? All this stuff that's in the water is being pulled out by the energy in the line, not the rod. The rod's already unloaded. The rod's done its job. So your top of your D-loop is sailing out, and it's expending energy. It's losing energy, sucking all that out of the water. There's a lot of energy loss pulling that out. So what happens if I use a long leader? Say I'm going to be using, say, a 10-foot leader. So there's my 10-foot leader. Look how little sink tip there is in the water, about half the sink tip. The rest of it is out of the water. And as a consequence, when you roll forward and your rod unloads, you're expending far less energy pulling what's left of the sink tip out of the water. Plus, you get a better rod loading because you've got more productive weight. The top of the D-loop is bigger because the point of the D-loop is moved further back. So because that's been moved further back, more productive weight. So you've got more energy in the rod to begin with, and you're losing less pulling that out of the water. So I've got a clip here. We're going to show the clip. Before I start, I'll mention that I was using a long leader in both cases, but I left one cast with the fly way out in front of me, which simulates a short leader. So just that one caveat, but it doesn't change anything. This is with a fly way out in front and a fly in the right position is the same thing as a short leader and a long leader. So let's get going here. We'll show this one. Okay, here I am making my cast. The fly is landing a little off stream, and you notice all of that tip and part of the D-loop is dropped into the water. Okay? because it's all that, a lot of it's out in front of me. Now, on this camera angle, you're not seeing much of the D-loop. This camera angle is being used to show the front of the fly line, the leader, the tip, and the front of the D-loop. The back of the D-loop, I'm not really showing all that well. You can't really see it. So you can see there's all that tip that's in the water, plus some of the head of the line. And so when we roll forward, we've got all that energy loss. At this point right here, the rod's unloaded. The line is starting to go out. So all that red line that I've got there, lost energy, that's the energy being expended to try to pull all of that tip out of the water, plus the leader, plus the fly. So you're losing all that energy to get it out, so the cast has less energy going forward. And you've got all this dead weight or unproductive weight at the bottom of the D-loop. It's huge. It's about 20 foot of unproductive weight in this particular example that you're just simply not using to make your D-loop. So as a consequence, this cast does not roll out all that well. I should go back. I'll show you what I did. I haven't shot any line. Look at that. I went, that one's not going. I didn't even bother shooting line. I knew it was going to be a garbage cast. So you can see I didn't let anything go. I kept my grip on the running line. I'm going, I'm going to redo this one. So here we go. Now we're simulating the long leader, and you can see where the flies landed right at the end of the blue line. And I've got a bigger D-loop, and more importantly, that tip is pretty well all off the water. It's not touching the water at all at this point of the cast. So we'll let this roll forward, and you can see when it comes out, there's very little water disturbance as I'm lifting the line. And at that point is just the tip of the end of the sink tip, or that's floating tip, but the end of the tip, maybe that much, is in the water. So that's the point where the rod's unloaded. So the energy is expended getting that out. And there's a lot less, if you look at this area here, there's a lot less unproductive weight. You know, about 10 foot versus 20 foot is really the difference in the unproductive weight. So this cast really went, and you can see I let go of the running line. Boom. And you can see the rod bounce when it came up hard on the reel. So there's an example of what it looks like when you use a short leader versus a long leader and the fly's landing in the same place with bow cast. And when you use a long leader and you keep that fly landing in the right spot, sort of off a 45-degree angle about a rod length away, and you keep it landing there consistently, it's going to give you a much bigger D-loop, and you're going to have a much better cast, and you'll lose far less energy pulling the bottom of that D-loop out of the water because hardly any of it's in it. You know, you just maybe got a little bit of the sink tip at most, or sometimes just the leader. And a lot of my casts in these examples, when at the instant the rod is unloading, there's no line in the water whatsoever. It's just the leader and the fly. That is the best example. And when you get that going, when you just got the leader in the water and the fly in the water, at the moment that rod unloads, you're going to get an excellent cast every single time. So keep that in mind. Long leaders just don't benefit the fishing. They benefit the casting as well. So when next time you hear this dog about, oh, you just need 3 feet, well, you've just lost a whole lot of your cast as well, not the fishing effectiveness. You've lost a lot. All you need is a fly that gets down on its own, and you can have as long a leader as you want. So keep that in mind the next time somebody tells you all you need is a short leader. Cheers.